Good morning. Welcome, church. We're glad that you are here today. I just have a couple of announcements. The first thing is make sure that you grabbed a bulletin because there's lots of stuff in there that you need to know about. Coming up this week is Ad Council on Thursday at 7. Ad Council meetings, everyone's invited to attend those. Doesn't matter if you're officially on Ad Council or not. So come if you'd like this Thursday at 7. If you need a name tag, there's instructions on how to get the name tags going and how you can pick yours up. So thank you for wearing those. We also have something else kind of very important, and you've heard this announcement before, but we still need nursery volunteers. And actually what we really need are people to work in the nursery. It is a paid position, and so maybe you come to first service and you don't go to second service, but you'd like to work in the nursery and possibly just put a little pocket change in your purse every month. Let Corinne Sperry know, or think about that, or pray about that. We especially need adults to partner with teenagers that are interested in working. So if you're interested in doing that, she actually could use about 2 people, or the more we have on a rotating basis, the better that would be. So it is a paid position, so you can work first service, Sunday school, or second service. And until then, we're going to do some sign-up sheets. So I'm going to pass this back around because we need somebody for next week's second service. So that would be you guys sitting right here. And then there are going to be some times Corinne's going to come back and get the August calendar on here. So would you think about that, pray about that, network with the people that you know who would maybe like this opportunity to come and work on Sunday morning and serve our families. All right, thumbs up if you can do that. Yeah, children's ministry is very important, and ministering to young families is a value of this church that we've always held. And so we need to sustain that. All right, so see how you can help us. Let's stand and greet one another. Grab some coffee. Paula's over there with the coffee. Get it before Kurt drinks it all, and then we'll sing.
Messed up my top, but whatever. People can figure that out, right? Okay.
I made the plate for you.
Thank you.
Said we needed adults 2 or 3 on a rotating basis. You could work anytime.
Debbie pull you out of bed and bring you? Debbie put on a new dress and didn't realize that it had bloomers. Oh, that's.
Would you like to sign up for nursery? Here's the nursery thing. You guys can start it over here. How are you, honey? Are you good? Good morning. You are the best greeter, aren't you? All right. I'm ready. We're going to start with grace greater than all our sin. Marvelous grace. Here we go. Marvelous grace of our loving Lord, grace that exceeds sin and our guilt. Yonder on Calvary's mount outpoured, there where the blood of the Lamb was spilled. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Grace, grace, God's is greater than all our sin. Dark is the stain that we cannot hide. What can avail to wash it away? Look, there is flowing a crimson tide. Whiter than snow you may be today. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that is greater than all our sin. Marvelous, infinite, matchless grace, freely bestowed on all who believe. You who are longing to see His face, will you this moment His grace receive? Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that is greater than all our sin. Guys, did you sing your part on that? Did you know you had a... This is a new song to us, to First Service. You maybe know it. It's kind of been on the radio, or maybe you've heard it on YouTube. But it's called Broken Vessels. Sound familiar? Broken Vessels. It's real easy to pick up, and it has a version of Amazing Grace for the chorus. So join us when you feel comfortable, and let the words minister to you. All these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole. Empty-handed, but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. So that's it. We're going to do a second verse, same sort of tune. Here we go. You take our failure, you take our weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, the world to see your life in me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. seated.
Morning, everyone. My name is Justin, and I am currently serving the role of pastor here, so invite you to make the most of it. I'm going to try. In our services, we pause and we take some time for prayer. And during this time, you're going to have the opportunity this week to share some requests that you may have. Allow me to share a couple that I've been made aware of this week that you may or may not have. Last week we prayed for a lady named Holly who was in a car accident. Just want to let you know that Holly did pass away. And so pray for the Myers family. If you know Tim and Nancy Fox, well, Nancy, I think they both went to be with the family, and they are there now. But just continue to pray for the Myers family as they deal with that loss. And then Ruby Lawyer, who's Gail Pankratz's mom. She is less than 2 weeks from 99, and they're not sure how much longer she has as well. And the family's very, very excited in that she knows Jesus. It was a life well lived. And so they know that there is peace with what is going on in their lives, but just asking for prayer as she finishes out her time here on this earth, and then for the family in the midst of it all as well. And so let's be praying for those two families specifically. There's also prayer requests in the bulletin. But is there anybody else that has a request they want to share with the group that we can be praying for? If so, just raise your hand and, oh, we already got one.
As many of you know, my dad, Fred Chilcott, I'm going to ask for prayers, and he has been on hospice with congestive heart failure now for 2 years, and we've really tried to honor his request to be able to pass away at home. We're now to the point where medication is no longer working, and so we're having to face the reality and to move him into assisted living. So we're looking at 2 or 3 weeks out. This is a man who's very strong-willed. At times we took keys away and he hot-wired the riding lawnmower. My sister and I were struggling because we want to honor Dad's requests to be at home, but he also, he realizes that it's time. We cannot get the care out where he is, out in the middle of nowhere in southeast Kansas, 24/7. So we're looking at Lake Point in Augusta, but please pray for my dad, and I pray that maybe this will make him stronger, more well-balanced meals, care when he's falling, etc. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. So pray for Fred Chilcott.
I won't stand up because my lap's full, but do want to ask for you to begin particular prayers for my younger son, Robert. He will be leaving to be deployed a week from tomorrow. So we'll be able to see him next weekend one more time, but just keep him in your prayers as he heads out.
So prayers for Robert as he's being deployed.
I just wanted to ask for prayers for our youngest son. He is going to need open heart surgery in the next few years. He just had a cardiac checkup, and they said he's not gaining weight as fast as they'd like. So that's my prayer, really, is that we can help him get bigger so he can get stronger for the surgery. And the bigger and stronger he is, the bigger valve he can get, and then the longer it would be for the next surgery. So that's he's kind of a fussy eater, hard to put the weight on him. So that's my current prayer for him. So he's spunky.
What's his name?
His name's Paul Evans. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You are welcome. We will pray for Paul. He's going to be having open heart surgery soon. Yeah, Dean and Paula went to Montana to be with his sister. Prayers for them as they travel and in time with family. All right. This is a time where we pray. Even though I'm going to say some words at the start and probably at the end, so you know that we're done. There's going to be this time where you pray as well. And so may we be in this attitude where we are just going before God and we're saying, God, these are concerns that I have. These are concerns that people around us have, and we are going to trust you with what's going on. And so, Lord, as we now move into this time, help us to have the faith, to have the trust in you that you are hearing us, and that you can bring good to all of these situations, God. People are experiencing some loss. We lift up the Myers family, and I just pray that you will be who you are, God, which is a God of comfort, and that you will bless them and take care of them and give them a sense of hope in what's going on. We think of Ruby Lawyer and the Pancrantz family as she is near the end of her life, and I pray that even though it's a life well lived, God, we still experience some grief in this. So I just pray again that Jesus would be the hope in their situation. I pray for Fred Chilcott and his family's trying to make some decisions on how to honor him, and God also how to best care for him. Sometimes those thoughts can butt heads a little bit, and God, would you please help the family in making decisions that are going to be the absolute best for him. Here's what I believe, God, you have a best for this situation, and so may you guide and lead as that happens. We lift up Robert Kessler, I believe, who's going to be deployed again, and I just pray for peace, and we ask for safety, God, but we also ask that he can trust you with whatever situation that he ends up being in. And we lift up Paul as he needs open heart surgery. God, I pray that you will strengthen him, that you will help him to eat the things that he needs to be strong, and that the recovery from the coming up surgery will go well. And then Dean and Paula, as they've headed to Montana to be with their sister, I pray that that is a good trip, God, and that time with family will be so worthwhile. There's other things, God, stuff that's on our hearts. And so we pause, and in the silence, we lift them up to you. Hear our prayers. I don't believe our prayer time has to start or stop just because somebody's speaking. So may we continue to be in this attitude of prayer as long as you are calling us to. God, we are going to trust you. Help us as we move towards a time of offering, and God, also a time of message. Help us to be able to just experience you in a fresh and a new and a powerful way. God, as we prepare to give our tithes, our offerings, and our gifts, may our hearts be filled with joy as we are saying thank you to you with what we have and ourselves. In Jesus' name, amen. may be seated. So we are continuing this message series called Broken Vessels. And I thank you so much for singing a song called Broken Vessels today and preparing to do so. That was very, very nice of you, and I appreciate that a ton. The whole idea behind this series is that God uses imperfect people, of which I am one of them. I'm one of those people that mess up all the time and yet really appreciate the fact that God still loves me and accepts me the way that I am. Well, this past week, I went on Facebook, I think on Monday, and I posed a question. And when I did that, I realized that I'm probably not friends with a whole lot of you yet. And maybe that's because you don't want to be friends with me, and that's fine. We'll get through that at some point here. But I asked a question on Facebook, and then I realized that most of these people don't know me, and so this week I actually figured out a way to connect with the Benton page. So in the future, when I ask questions, we will be able to get a chance. But what the question was simply is if you could have a lifetime supply of any product in the world, what would it be? What would you want to have? And so I put it on Facebook. And you'll also notice as you're looking at the screen, because I'm going to show what some of the people shared in a second, that typically on the bottom right of the screen of the message slides that I prepare, I'll usually put a hashtag there. And the reason I put that hashtag there is because my hope is that when we begin to learn stuff about Christ that connects with us personally, that if we're Facebookers or people who are on Twitter, or Snapchat-ers, or whatever we are in all of this, that if God begins to show something that we would take some time and share that with the world around us and just post something on Facebook to say, something that maybe that God has shown you, and then put that hashtag on there. We'll be able to all look back and see some of the stuff that God's been showing us during our time here at Benton. All right, so I posed this question, what's the one product? And people answered this with much grace in what they were sharing. Some people were saying, boy, I would want clean water, right? I would need gasoline so that we continue with all, electricity. People were sharing this. I had over 70 responses to the question. It was really fun to read through those. But some of the responses I wanted to show you because ask yourself, do I really want a lifetime supply of this? And one person said, donuts. Definitely donuts. And my initial thought was, yes. I want to hang out with this person every day if they have a lifetime supply of donuts. But then I started thinking, what would I look like if I had a lifetime supply of donuts? Whenever I wanted one, I could eat one. I would probably look even worse than I do right now. And so I'm not sure this would be the best thing for me. Another person said Chick-fil-A, duh. Which you think is funny until you realize that was actually my eldest son. It was the one who said that one. And it was like, so where do you want to go out to eat today? Well, it's Sunday, so I can't take him there. But Chick-fil-A was his answer. Somebody else said this. There was a pastor that I'm connected with, and they said, we're on a mission trip, and the best answer that the youth came up with was cows. They provide milk and steak, cheeseburgers, and leather for clothing. And I was thinking, what a brilliant answer. This world needs more cows. And this world needs more people like Justin dressed in leather, right? Is that what the world wants? Is that what we all want? I'm not seeing a whole lot of heads shaking yes right now. Okay, well, we will move on. Somebody said grandchildren, and I thought, well, this is a precious answer. Somebody wants a lifetime supply of grandchildren. And at that point, as I read this, I'm in my house, and I have two children who are screaming at one another because this game that they were playing at home, and here's the game, just so you have an idea. They had a laundry basket on each side of the room on a couch. And then they had this big, plasticky type ball. And what the goal was is you smack the ball in your face and you try to hit it across the room into the basket on the other side. And if it goes in, you get a point, right? And they were playing to whatever was far enough that one of them would declare a victory and then run away fast enough that they don't get beat up by the other one. And that's pretty much what the game was. Okay, so they're saying they're doing this game, bam, to the other side, and they're fighting because, of course they're blocking the shot, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, do we really want a lifetime supply of children or grandchildren? does that mean, if whoever wrote this, does that mean that each and every day you wake up and there is a lifetime supply of grandchildren in your home? Everywhere you go, there's grandchildren. And some people are saying, nothing wrong with that. I'm letting you know that I love my kids. I wake up every morning and I'm excited to see them, and I'm also excited to see them leave the home. It's true. I love my kids, but there's a time and the place, and I'm not excited for grandchildren. I mean, if they want to wait 10, 15 years, I am going to be very, very okay with that. As somebody else said, sweet tea and toilet paper. I'm thinking, great, I love sweet tea, and you know what? I am a fan of toilet paper. I use it several times a day. Maybe that's more than I should share with you. Then I started to think, if I had a lifetime supply of sweet tea, I would need a lifetime supply of toilet paper as well. And maybe my favorite answer was this last one. That's not true. This person was just sucking up. Just letting you know. But if you could have the lifetime supply of something, would you take it? I think there are things that we would take where we would really like to have a lifetime supply of those things. For me, if it was food related, my two favorite things, if you're writing this down, because my birthday's in April, right? My two favorite things are cheese and chocolate. All right? So cheese and chocolate. I just love those things. But if I had as much of that as I wanted, I would be in rough shape. I would be in more difficult shape than I am even right now. Some of us love roller coasters, and we would think, if I could just go on roller coasters whenever. That's not me. That's not something I would want. I think there are certain things in this world that we shouldn't have a lifetime supply of. But there's one thing that I am so thankful that we do have a lifetime supply of. And that's grace. Grace is this thing that God offers us. It's His favor. It's His love. It's His compassion. It's His action towards our lives. He has offered and given to us freely. It's available for us. Sometimes it's hard for us to accept. The Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians, he begins to try and understand how important this grace is and how we can see and experience this grace in our lives. And it seems to happen in times where maybe things aren't going the way that we would have hoped that they would. So Paul is writing these letters to the Corinthians, and the first of the letter, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians in the Bible, in that letter he's writing to this church at Corinth just to let them know that some of the practices that they are doing as a church really aren't appropriate. The way some of the people are behaving isn't right, and he's trying to help them to understand that there are right ways and wrong ways to be a follower of Jesus. Well, the second letter that he's writing, the one that we're going to look at here in just a moment, what's going on here is there's some correction stuff that's going on, but what Paul hears is that there are some teachers in the community that have started to tell the members of the church that the stuff that Paul is saying isn't true, that Paul is a liar. They're saying that Paul is a false teacher, and the stories that Paul has shared aren't necessarily accurate, and they started to say Paul isn't really an apostle of Jesus. And so the people in the church are saying, well, why are we listening to this Paul guy if the things that he is saying isn't really true? And so Paul's trying to write to help them understand that what these false teachers are saying are wrong. And in his way of trying to connect who he is and what God is doing in his life compared to what the false teachers have done is incredibly different. And Lord, as we begin to see the difference of this, may we understand your grace. May we realize it in a more powerful way than we have leading up to this point. God, I thank you for the chance to be able to look at your word. And may what we do be acceptable and pleasing to you in this time, for you are our rock and our blessed Redeemer. Amen. So these false teachers, they're questioning Paul, and Paul is now trying to respond to them. And as he does, he starts to tell the story. And what he says is, I know this man in Christ, and it's important that he is saying in Christ in this, who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Now, Paul is talking about himself here. But he is intentionally not using his name. He's speaking in the third person, like this is somebody who is beyond himself, because he's trying to put himself in a position that everyone understands that it is not about Paul in this. And so he says that he was caught up, which is a passive verb. Paul had no action in what was going on here. This is something that God did. God brought him up into the third heaven. The third heaven is the place where God dwells. That's what they viewed the third heaven as at this time. And so Paul is saying, there was this guy, it's really himself, where all of a sudden God took him and brought him to this place where he could see and experience some extraordinary stuff. He says, whether or not it was in body or out of body, he says, I don't know. I don't know how to explain some of the stuff that's happened to me, but God knows. And then he repeats it and says, and I know that this man, whether it's in body or out of body, I don't know those things, but he was caught up to this paradise, this place where God dwells, and he heard these inexpressible things, and things that he isn't even permitted to share with anybody. So what's going on? Paul gets caught up, and God brought him into his presence in heaven where he resides. And he starts to show Paul all the stuff. He said, it is so amazing in a sense, I don't think I could even describe it to you. And not only that, but God said that I can't describe this to you. Paul says, I will boast about a man like that. But I'm not going to boast about myself, except about my weakness. What type of man is Paul saying he would boast about? Is he saying that he's going to boast about a man who was caught up into heaven? No, what he is saying is he is boasting about somebody who is willing to say that this is a person who was in Christ, that this is a person that God chose to bring up to the third heaven, that God then showed him things that he couldn't even say. Paul says, I'm going to boast about the person who does the things that God, or who accepts the fact that God does things in their lives and will allow God to do those things in their life, whether or not they even have the ability to talk about it afterwards. That's the type of person I am going to boast in. This is about what God can do. This is about what Jesus can do. This is not about what Paul can do. He says, the only thing that I would boast about in regards to myself is my weakness. The fact that I had nothing to do with this. He says, even if I chose to boast, he said, I would not be a fool. You want to know why? Because everything that I'm telling you is true. These false teachers are saying that I'm not really an apostle, that I haven't really learned from Jesus, that I haven't really followed God in these certain ways. Well, I'm letting you know, these things happened. Whether you believe it or not, these things happened, and they happened to me. I didn't do it. Paul said, this is what God has chosen to do in my life. This is what God has done. God brought me up. God shared this stuff with me. This is all about God. And so if I were to tell you about this stuff, it would be the absolute truth. But I refrain. I am not going to share those things with you because God told me not to. And I don't want you to think more of me just because of the great things that I got to experience. It's not about me. These great things happen, but it's not about me. God showed me stuff that I can't even begin to talk about, but it's not about me. As a matter of fact, if I could show you something about me, it's that it's not about me. That this is all about Jesus. That God is the one who blesses. That God is the one who shows us the things. That God is the one who gives all the experiences in our life. And mountaintop experiences are good experiences, aren't they? Those of us who have had great experiences, whether we went to a camp or our kids went to a camp or they're going on a mission trip soon, they are going to come back and they are going to be so incredibly excited about what God has done in their life. And here's the thing. It's because of what God has done in their life that we need to be excited about. It's not what they got to do. Right? But it's what God has done in them and what God has done with them. Paul said, that's the thing that I'm going to brag about. It's not about me. And so it's about what Jesus can do in a person's life. And sorry, I froze. Can you go to the next slide for me? Oh, thank you. So then Paul goes on to say that he's saying that it's not about me. But then he admits, you know what? It's hard for me to sometimes think that it's not about me. That's what he admits here. He says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, and for me to begin to think that I was chosen because of who I am, or I experienced this because I'm great, or because of how faithful I followed God up to this point. God said, well, you've reached this far, so now I guess I'm going to have to open up heaven to you. Paul's saying that I would catch myself thinking that this might be about me, that this might be about something that I can offer to the world, or I was good enough for God for this, and so therefore I have the chance to share that. Paul said, so that I won't become conceited. He said, I was given a thorn in my flesh. The word thorn here, it's not like a rose thorn that you prick it and you bleed. And it's not one of those. It literally means a stake used for torture. This was a big deal. This is something that brought about a whole lot of pain in a person's life. It was used for torture. And Paul's saying, this is the type of thorn that I received, that it was like I was being tortured now. I got to see this stuff, and now I'm experiencing this pain that hurts. And we don't know if it's physical or emotional or even spiritual. What we do know, though, is Paul said, this hurt. I cannot stand this. It is so much pain in my life. And Paul says that this thorn is a messenger of Satan. And so the devil is working in such a way to just get to the point where I just feel like he is beating me down, because it says when he torments me, it is actually the picture. It means to be constantly punching with your fists. It's a picture of a prize fighter who somebody is down on the ground, and they just keep beating him and beating him and beating him. And Paul's saying, this is how I feel. And somehow this is what was allowed in my life. I got to see all these great things. And then God allowed a thorn, this pain, this experience that I don't want anything to be a part of, happen in my life. It says 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away. Don't read this as 3 times I prayed. Because the word pleaded is a desperate cry for help. My eldest son, whom some of you have met to this point, if you've noticed, he has this large scar on the back of his head. When he was born with a precancerous mole on the back of his head. It's really noticeable. And so after meeting with several doctors, the course that was encouraged for us to take in order to deal with this was, you could leave it, but something might happen, and you don't know what age. And the older they get, the harder it is to deal with this stuff. But kids are flexible and stretchy at this age, so we encourage you to do something. And so we ended up going the course of action that they recommended, which meant that he would have to have multiple surgeries in order to remove this. And I got to let you know, I did not want my son to go through these things. What baby should have to go through something like that? And it ended up taking 5 surgeries in order for him to get through it. And I remember each and every time taking my child and walking him back into that back room where I know that they were going to anesthetize him, and he'll in a very weird and unnormal way all of a sudden just pass out. And I would just cry. This isn't right, God. My prayers were pleadings. God, why just do anything you can so he does not have to go through these things. That's the type of pleading that I believe Paul was doing before God when he started experiencing pain and hurt in his life just because he was trying to follow Jesus. Or the experience that he is feeling right now because these people are lying about him, and they're questioning everything about him, his character, and whether or not he really knows Jesus, and that had to be uncomfortable as well. But it's the same with us, isn't it? That sometimes as we're going through life and things seem to be going fine, and we're having these experiences that it's really good, all of a sudden when something goes bad, it's like, well, why me? Why in the world is this happening now? You want to know why I think it is? You want to know why I think sometimes God allows us to go through difficult situations? It's because ask yourself, when things are going well, why do we really think things are going well? You want to know why I think it is? Or with me at least? I catch myself looking at the circumstances. Well, it's because of the job that I have. Things are going all right. It's because, it's because I ended up with this wife and these kids that things are going well, and that's great. But then all of a sudden when something difficult happens, something painful happens, what do? Especially people who are followers of Jesus, what do? Many of us, we get down on our knees and we start looking to God and saying, God, what is going on? Please help me. Help us to get through this. We've lost our job, God. You know this, but help us. Help us to be able to get through this. That's what we do. And Paul is saying, there is something about the painfulness. There's something about the difficult times that God puts us in because he wants us to learn something. And so Paul, at least after this third time of begging to God, God, take away this thing that I don't want to be going through or that I don't want to be experiencing. What does God say? God said to him, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is made perfect in your weakness. You think maybe God puts us through these things sometimes so that we can learn to trust him more? Because I know for me, I may be a thankful person when things are going well, but I don't necessarily always see his grace in the things that are going well because things are going well. When I'm struggling, when I'm hurting, when my kids are going through something that I don't want them to go through, I'm going before God and saying, God, I need all that you have. Because I can't do this on my own. Paul was there, and Jesus says, now you're at the point where you can hear that my grace that I offer you, it's going to be enough. And as you are feeling weak, as these people are questioning your integrity, as these people are making fun of the things that you're teaching, as these people are saying that you don't really know Jesus, I'm going to be your strength. I'm going to be there for you. Paul says, so therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest in me. Again, this is about what Jesus can do in me. This is what Jesus does for me. And he gives us the ability to endure anything. Paul says, for Christ's sake, that's why I delight in weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, difficulty, because when I'm weak, we get to see God's strength. Paul's saying, I'm okay with the tough times. I'm okay if people are going to question whether or not I know Jesus because my life isn't going great. I'm okay with that. Because I get to learn who Jesus is more in this difficult time. And I believe it will give me a story that I can share with others about who Jesus is in my tough times as well as the good times. Because when I'm weak, we get to see Jesus in my life. And we be people that see that the circumstances in life can cause us to be distracted from Christ. And may we be thankful for, but also embrace the good and the bad so that we can see Christ. There was this guy who was in his office and he was rearranging it at home. And he was at the point where he was taking this very, very large wooden desk and he was trying to push it across to the other side. And as he was doing that, his 4-year-old daughter comes walking in to the room. And she sees that he's trying to move stuff and she said, "Daddy, can I help you?" Of course, Dad says, "Of course you can." And so he's standing on the end of the desk, and she comes walking and steps right in front of him, and she puts her hands on the desk, and he puts his hands on the desk outside of her, and they're trying to push this desk. Now, it was more difficult for him to push it this way, right? Because she was in front of him, and so it was harder for her to push, and they were having a difficult time pushing it. And so finally, she gets frustrated, she stops, and she turns around, and she looks at her dad and says, "You are in the way. Would you please go over there?" Except she didn't use the word please. And so the dad stepped back and went to the side of the room. And what does the 4-year-old girl do? She sticks her hands back on the desk and she starts to push. What happens? Absolutely nothing. Because she decided that her father, needed to step away. She figured this out on her own. She couldn't do it. God, would you help us to be the people that see that you truly are everything that your word says? That whatever situation I am in, God, that we are in, we would not ask you to step away, but that we would say we cannot do this, period. And we especially cannot do it without you. May we receive you, may we embrace you, and may we allow your grace to be the gift that it is in our lives. God, take us, these broken vessels, and use them in a way that you want us to be used for your sake. And may we have a story that we can show, possibly even tell by your grace to the world around us. May people see the strength of Jesus Christ in the lives of us, his broken vessels. Amen.
We're going to close today with a song that we've sung a lot here at the Benton Church. Again, speaking of the Lord's grace. So would you stand and join us with Grace Flows Down? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Amazing love, now flowing down from hands and feet that were nailed to the tree. As grace flows down and it covers me, it covers me. It covers me. It covers me. And covers me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Amazing love, now flowing down from hands and feet that were nailed to the tree. As grace flows down and it covers me. 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 And covers me. It covers me.
Can I let you know that the front of this church, this room is always open for people to pray. If you want prayer, if you're realizing that there's something that's been going on in your life where you have not been trusting Jesus, and you're wondering, why am I going through these things? I invite you to come up, spend some time in prayer. Here's what might happen, though. I'm just warning you. There might be other people around you who will walk up and just say, "Can I pray with you?" We'll pray for you. And after our time of blessing, and people are done shaking my hands, if you're up here, I'll come pray with you. I would love for us to all just know Jesus and experience his love and grace. So it's open. May it bless us as we leave. May we be people that understand that God has this grace that is available and it's been given to us. May we see it and receive it and embrace it and allow God to do everything he wants to in our lives, even through the tough times. Because that's, my friends, is when we might be able to see him the clearest. Go in peace. Amen.
rest. My fight, no matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things, be my life and bread. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing. I will trust in you. 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 Dear younger me, where do I start? If I could tell you everything that I have learned so far, then you could be one step ahead of all the painful memories still running through my head. I wonder how much different things would be, dear younger me. Dear younger me, I cannot decide. Do I give some speech about how to get the most out of your life? Or do I go deep and try to change the choices that you'll make? 'Cause they're the choices that made me. And even though I love this crazy life, sometimes I wish it was a smoother ride, dear younger me. Dear younger me. Oh, if I knew then what I know now, the condemnation would have had no power. My joy, my pain would have never been my word. If I knew then what I know now, would have not been hard to figure out what I would have changed if I had heard. Dear younger me. it's not your fault. You never meant to carry this beyond the cross.